We no longer have a scientific method, right? Medical science is about the affirmation of someone's psychotic delusions, right? And I'm not, I'm not using radical terminology. This is real. We're seeing this, where you take a child and you have adults that have all kinds of delusional beliefs, and then that child could be castrated. It's ridiculous.
But before we get into our conversation, my name is Eric Metaxas, and this channel exists to bring you a biblical perspective on today's news, culture, and hot-button issues. If you're new here or not, welcome, and be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon so you are notified when new videos get posted. When I'm traveling on the country, people talk about, Christian universities, and I go, you know what? There are very, very few actual Christian universities. I can no longer say to somebody like, you should go to Wheaton. I can't say that anymore. I can't. So people say, well, what do you recommend? Top of the list, I say Liberty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not, so there are CINO institutions, Christian in name only, right? I mean, these are institutions.
Those are chinos. Don't be a chino.
Don't be a chino.
In name only. Yeah.
Perfect.
I copyrighted that, by the way. And if people use the term chino, I get 25 cents. If you wear a pair of chinos, I get 25 cents. I want to be
perfect.
clear.
That's perfect.
But it's true.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, the other part of my day job, so executive director of the Standing for Freedom Center, but vice president of communications and public engagement at Liberty University. And, the argument really is why you should send your son or daughter, grandson, granddaughter to Liberty University.
Yeah.
Christian education matters now probably more than ever in this country. The battle lines believe in the building blocks and the bedrock of freedom. How are they going to promote that for the next generation, right? I mean, so Liberty has 700 degree programs, 16 colleges. We have a school of law. We have a school of medicine. We have a school of nursing. We have a school of engineering. It's not just a liberal arts institution. It's a full-fledged university. So we have the highest enrollment numbers ever in the history of our institution. We're just 52, 53 years old. We were founded in 1971 by Dr. Jerry Falwell.
The great Jerry Falwell. But we could talk for 2 days about Jerry Falwell. What a hero.
An amazing man of God, a man of faith. He founds a church in 1956. He's 23 years old when he starts this church. Then he's 38 years old and says, hey, I have a vision for starting a Christian university. And by the way, I want to make this institution for evangelicals. Similar to what Notre Dame is for Catholics or Brigham Young University is for Mormons. I want to create this institution. I want it to be excellent. I want it to be world-class in academics, Division I sports, football, you name it. By the way, that is being fulfilled. That dream is being fulfilled even now. We were at the Fiesta Bowl just last year. For those who pay attention, that's a big deal. That's a really big deal. The top Division I schools that are competing in the playoff system, Liberty actually got in there. We won the first quarter. We got annihilated, and then at the end of the game. But I'll just tell you that nothing had ever been achieved like that before in the history of our school. But the most important thing is when people are saying, oh my gosh, we look at the future of the country, we look at the way leaders are going, we look at the youngest generation, 2 out of 3 are abandoning the Christian faith that grew up in church. How do we address this crisis? Well, it's easy. I mean, in one sense, and it's obvious. That's education is the most important thing. It is discipleship. It is disciple making. It is evangelism. It's all there. If you basically hand education over to public schools, to teachers unions, to the Department of Education, you are essentially putting your child in a position where they may not come out.
Yeah.
And there's a 2/3 chance that they won't. That is why Christian education is so important.
Well, and that's K through 12. And what I find horrifying is that you can have done all the right things with your kid, and then you say, okay, we'll send them to, you name it, some quote unquote Christian college. And wokeism has infected many of these Christian colleges that 10 years ago would have been like, oh, send your kid to this one or that one. They're great. Now, And folks, this is serious. I mean, think about what we're talking about, that they're not standing against the lunacy. Wokeism is what? It's cultural Marxism. It's atheistic. The roots are from hell. The roots go all the way down to hell. And a lot of them have opened the door to this lunacy. Liberty has not. And that is why I can sit here and rave about liberty. I'm not faking it. I have been there many times. To fight the good fight on the college level, that is just a big deal. And I want to caution parents and grandparents, if your kids are at one of these other Christian schools, a lot of them, they're in the battle. They have professors on there that are not on board with what most of us are on board with, and it's bad. And so liberty is not only fighting the good fight, but liberty is big. It's not, like I often rave similarly about Hillsdale, but Hillsdale is like, I don't know, 5,000 undergrads or 4,000. It's small.
I think it's 2,500. But yes.
Okay,
yeah,
so it's small. So
yeah.
it's great, but it's small. Liberty, you've got how many students?
So we've got over 15,000 on campus when you look at K through 12 online, as well as
K through 12.
We have K through 12 online. We have about 18,000 students across the country doing homeschooling online.
K through 12.
Yeah.
You know what? I forgot about this. I wasn't expecting to talk about this, but that's like even more crazy.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
Yeah, so this is using the digital sphere to bring people into education in California, in New York. I mean, so you think about parents who are saying, "Oh my gosh, what do I do?" There's answers for this. We have actually solved for this problem, this challenge in education. COVID was a huge on-ramp for online, remote homeschooling.
Romans 8:28, folks. Think about it. COVID, the nightmare of COVID, led many, many parents to see what was actually going on. They would have never known if it hadn't been for the nightmare of COVID. And now their eyes are open and they said, you know what? I'm not going to feed my children poison. I'm not going to let my kids get fed poison. I'm going to take this into my own hands. So yeah, homeschooling has, exploded. And so obviously, as you've just reminded me, Liberty's also involved with that. But how many students, when we're talking about the campus, the college, you said there are 15,000
residential
students there, but you've got a huge online.
Yeah, it's well over 100,000 online. Well over 100,000 online. So
this is unbelievable.
Yeah, it's a modern miracle. And so when you think about the vision of Dr. Falwell, I don't think he ever envisioned it being that big, and we're just getting started.
Well, because he can envision like online enrollment. The fact that people anywhere.
That's right.
I'm gushing like Jimmy Fallon. Forgive me, folks, but listen, because you guys are doing this at this level, I want everybody to know, because a lot of times people are, they wring their hands. I mean, you mentioned Notre Dame. There was once a day where if you were a faithful Catholic, you'd say, I want to send my kid there. That place has gone liberal, woke, nuts. You don't want to send your kid to Notre Dame. You don't. It's like Georgetown. They've been taken over by the left. And, Yale University was founded as a Christian institution in the early 18th century. Well, guess what? They're like a Marxist training ground now, So those who have stood firm, like Liberty, and it's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. So
it's huge. And so as we go on, we're pursuing excellence in every area. So the important thing is fully accredited, right? All the degree programs. It's not like, I'm getting a certificate in something, online. No, you can get a business degree online. You can get a number of subjects that are covered online, remotely. But I would just encourage people to check that out at liberty.edu. The most important thing you can do is give your son or daughter a Christian education. That's essential. Going back to what you said about Yale, Princeton, Harvard, these were all divinity schools originally. Yes, they were graduating lawyers. Yes, they were graduating physicians, but they had a theological Christian founding. It wasn't just that it was muted or it was downplayed, the Christian faith. It was literally about, for Christ for truth, for his glory, upholding the Christian scriptures, right? The gospel of Jesus Christ.
Did you know that every solar panel needs silver paste to work its magic? And the demand for solar power is doubling every 3 years, so silver is set to take off. A silver IRA with Noble Gold makes perfect sense. No matter who wins the election or what the economy does, silver's future looks dazzling. Visit noblegoldinvestments.com now to claim up to 10 1-ounce silver Trump coins or a 10-ounce silver American flag bar. Let's catch this silver tsunami together. The Standing for Freedom Center is
it's
the web house. I mean,
yeah.
I'm sorry, the website is
standingforfreedom.com. Yeah. So in the vision of Dr. Falwell, he wants to found a modern Christian university. He wants to excel in areas of academics and athletics. The other thing he said quite clearly, this is in his autobiography, it was in the 1990s, that he wanted a Christian institution that was not just conservative theologically, he wanted it to be conservative politically. And he was absolutely clear. He was, pro-free market. He didn't want it to sort of succumb to the left-leaning or liberal drift as other Christian universities had done in the past. There was a Christian ethicist. His name was Ronald Nash, and he wrote a lot of books in the 1980s. One of the things he said in a speech, it was about the ACLU. He was giving a speech, and he said, if you wanted to ensure your son or daughter became a liberal, send them to a Christian university. That was Dr. Ron Nash in the 1980s. This is something where Dr. Falwell was seeing something was happening culturally, politically. You go back to 1971, there was Evangelicals For McGovern, Ron Sider and others that were creating.
This is exactly like Evangelicals For Harris.
Oh,
you know what it's like? It's like pacifists who are for guns, pro-gun pacifists. Like your head explodes because the policies of McGovern, and those are nothing compared to the policies of Harris-Waltz. But I mean, the fact that there are people who don't understand, who do not understand that you cannot do. If you vote for Harris-Waltz, and if you have any understanding of how policy works or anything like that, you can't be a serious Christian. I mean, you can think you're a Christian, you can believe in the resurrection of Jesus, but then you're voting against that. And so this has been going on since the early 70s. That's why Liberty University was founded.
That's exactly right.
Basically.
So the 1960s protest culture, you think of Rudy Dushka, who basically said we need to do the long march through the institutions. They went from the streets into colleges and universities and elsewhere, right? They went into the high rises in Manhattan. They went on to the board of trustees for major Fortune 500 companies, and they started systematically changing things and transforming. It's kind of the liberal progressive gaze, if you will, the perspective, the lens by which we interpret reality. That was shifting. And in the 1970s, Dr. Falwell, I mean, today we see, oh yeah, that's obvious, but you don't just create an institution like this overnight to scale, where you're educating 140,000 students. You can't just do that overnight. You have to build that up. So he recognized, he had the forethought and the foresight, and I think the Holy Spirit gave it to him, recognizing this is what we have to do in order to ensure that the foundations of freedom exist for the next generation. So the Standing for Freedom Center is a part of that answer in terms of theologically conservative, politically conservative, defending life, liberty, and truth. So, yes, Evangelicals for McGovern, that was like the first iteration of what you're seeing today, Evangelicals for Harris. And the entire purpose of that is to not focus on policies, public policy, not on substantive issues like abortion, like parental rights, like medical freedom, like education. Instead, just focus on personalities. Do you like this person better than you like that person? Let's not think about the 10,000 other reasons. It's personnel, it's policymakers, it's appointees that go into an administration. Don't look at that. Instead, do the Saul Alinsky tactic of isolating, freezing an individual, attacking them, right, and then and ultimately rejecting them. So that's the whole purpose behind Evangelicals for Harris, is just to put the focus and the attention on Donald Trump,
Yeah.
not the policies.
And
of the
listen,
debate.
Evangelicals for Harris, I mean, I'll be real clear. You cannot be a serious Christian and vote for Harris. Now, you can think you are, but the fact of the matter is you're participating in evil. So it's like saying, I'm a serious Christian. Oh, yes, I commit adultery. Yes, I steal. Oh, but I believe in the resurrection. I believe in the Nicene Creed. If you believe in those things, how do you do these other things? And so there's this disconnect where people just say, and I've talked about this a lot. They say, well, it's about faith. It's about faith. It's like, no, you're twisting what faith means. Faith without works is dead. If you are not living out your faith, then God doesn't see it as faith. He sees it as an illusion, a delusion that you have faith. But if you're not living out your faith, and there are many people today that have been deceived, and they think that somehow, well, politics is separate from my faith. Well, no, you're in the United States of America, and patriots have died so you can vote biblical policies, biblical leadership. So many Christian colleges and universities have drifted woke, or they're just, it's kind of like the way Yale was in the 80s when I was there. Like, it was conceivable that you could avoid it, the bad stuff, but it wasn't going to be easy.
Yeah.
And a lot of Christian colleges and universities that I would have recommended 15, 20 years ago, I can't anymore, because you could be sending your kid into Marxist lunacy, into wokery at the supposedly Christian school. It's pretty crazy. So there's just a tiny handful of schools that have stood really firm, and at the top of the list is Liberty. So I have to say I'm just grateful to everybody at Liberty for making that happen, because it's been tough.
Yeah, it's the real challenge, I think, in our modern times is not we want to stay true to the faith, right? Once for all, delivered to the saints. We have to stand unabashedly, unapologetically on the Word of God, and we have to recognize that there's no part of education that is isolated from the other. Right? What you're seeing with Marxism, what you're seeing with wokeism, is the fragmentation. It all gets isolated, it gets broken down through deconstruction. We no longer have a scientific method, right? Medical science is about the affirmation of someone's psychotic delusions, right? And I'm not. I'm not using radical terminology. This is real. We're seeing this, where you take a child and you have adults that have all kinds of delusional beliefs, and then that child could be castrated. It's ridiculous. This is what we're seeing in society. The scientific method was invented by Christians.
Correct.
Right? So, and nothing is isolated in all of human thought. You can't take one thing and say, well, we're going to be faithful to sort of uphold, the integrity of science, or the integrity of scientific discovery, if at the end of the day that discovery leads you to understand, hey, there is a divine maker, there's an intelligent designer. Let's personalize it. His name is Jesus Christ, and he created all of these things. That is why it's so critical to have a Christian education, a full-orbed worldview, a totalizing worldview, where you recognize all these things are connected. Leftism wants to hijack Christianity and wants to utilize it for its own purposes. It wants to appropriate Christianity.
I want to say, first of all, in my book, Is Atheism Dead?, I talk about the undeniable fact in history that modern science was created by Christians, by devout Christians. You can look it up in my book, Is Atheism Dead? Most people don't know that. And so what we call modern science is reality-based. God created a reality. He created the universe. He wants us to explore it and investigate it because it leads to his glory. So it's about truth. It's about reality. And what we're seeing now is when ideology takes over. And you saw this in Nazi Germany. They started saying, like, well, we don't want some science we don't like, so we're going to call it Jewish science, and then Aryan science, that's good science. So they started, it's where insanity invades, and you create this ideology. So any book, any science, anything that came from a quote-unquote Jewish source was labeled bad. So they were no longer interested in truth. They were interested in their ideology. So you get Nazi science, and you had scientists and doctors going along with this. You have the same thing happening now, where you have trans ideology, you have woke ideology. It's infected the medical world, the scientific establishment. So again, this is why we have to, what you're saying, we have to have a holistic view of reality. It can't be, I have this ideology, and if the facts bother me, I'm just going to blow off those facts and I'll get new facts.
Yeah.
That's basically what's happening. And so it's an interesting moment. It's why we need real Christian education. And by the way, courageous Christian education that says we're not going to allow these things to come in, which many, and I say it again, folks, many Christian colleges and universities, some of them led by friends of mine, they're in a battle. Wokeism is pushing in to these Christian schools. And so you guys at Liberty have stood the strongest, and I have to say, right now, it's a bigger deal than ever. I mean, in 2024, this is a big deal.
And I would add to everything you just said that that education is an offensive strategy, meaning that you have to recruit, you have to train up, you have to build. Let's be honest, education takes a long time. There's a methodology, a pedagogy. You don't just start and you do it like, oh, I'm going to do it in 18 months. I'm going to train up the next generation. No, it starts from the time a child is born, right? And you have to bring them up. That's why K through 12 matters, but that's also why college matters. It takes a long time to do it. China has a 100-year plan, a 100-year strategy. The leftists, it's like they have a 50-year strategy. I mean, they really are about capturing the institutions, culture-making institutions, whether it be entertainment. Obviously, we have these digital platforms. They own a lot of big tech. But they also want education. That's a big component of it. As conservatives, we have this defensive strategy, Eric, where we just focus on, well, this is the next election, and we got to win this, and this is the biggest election of our lifetime. That's true. But what about the next 50 years? That's why Christian universities matter.
Right. And if we don't win this election, there will be no next 50 years.
Exactly.
So we have to win, but then we have to do the hard work of undoing all of the damage that has happened in the culture,